Hey there, YouTubes. Chris Holman here with Kellie PV Fam. We are today discussing modern slavery, human and child sex trafficking, the demand for it. So we're going to go over some statistics today. We are going to show some videos. And again, everything that we are going over, you will find links in the description. All of that. So, I am having. There you go. You want to watch this? I'm having some technical difficulties. Here we go. There we go. Okay. All right. So, folks, thanks for tuning in. Again, let me just read this disclaimer here. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purpose such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. Fair use is a use permitted copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All right. So Kellie did an amazing thing here, getting me all this information. So Kellie, first of all, say hi to everybody.
Hello, how are you guys doing?
So Kellie, if you could just take a minute, and I mean, you spend a lot of time doing a lot of this research for me. So if you could kind of go through the process, like, you know, what exactly do you do for this research? Just real quick.
Well, I don't want to get too in depth about what I do, but I will say that I do a lot of research. I am a research person. I used to do it through books. Now I'm able to do it through the internet. I did it at the very beginning when it was in DOS mode. So basically what I do is I go behind the scenes, behind what your modern day news network would have, your MSM, and I really dive into a lot of what's behind the scenes, what's being reported that people don't really get to see, and draw it out, and I then research it, and I double check it, I triple check it, I cross-reference it, I pull up a lot of federal information that may be out there that I can cross-reference it with. And that's the reason why some of the dates may be later dates of like 2016, but that's because of the fact that
that's still recent.
You don't have the current day. That's where I'm at when I do these things. So that's kind of what I do.
Well, good. Well, again, thank you so much for everything you're doing. Eric Butler says in the chat, hey, y'all. Hey there, Eric. Thanks for coming. So today, like I said, we're going to go over what is the demand, right? So I mean, we started with what was going on down with Arizona for a few streams. We talked about this child sex trafficking, right? We exposed like the supply. We talked about the supply. But what is the demand? If there's a supply, there's a demand for it, right? So we're going to talk about that a bit today. This is basically going to be a two-parter, right, Kellie? Because we're going to...
it could be a two, possibly a three-part.
Yeah.
We're going to leave it open to a three-part, possibly.
So there is... basically, we're talking about the demand at a street level. Here is basically what we're talking about today. But then there's also an underlying thing that's been going on for 60 years that has had a dramatically negative effect on men and women and marriages, and that is an underlying cause of all this, and we will talk about that in a moment towards the end of the broadcast. So we go to the findings here. This is from globalslaveryindex.org. In the 2016 GSI, we estimated that, now this was 2 years ago, 45.8 million people are in some form of modern slavery in 167 countries. Now this goes beyond just sex trafficking, right? This is slavery as a whole, right? This idea that slavery was abolished worldwide is actually not true. At one point you could say that it was, but it has reemerged in the last, you'd say probably 25 years.
At least.
Yeah, it has reemerged across the globe, and we're seeing, I mean, it's really overlooked. I mean, there's no real outcry over this. Now look, anybody who knows me knows that I am very anti-racism, very anti-slavery. Like, I'm all about the individual, the worth of the individual. We're all equal in the eyes of God. You know, we all have our individual self-worth, right? And that anyone would be forced into slavery, no matter what that type of slavery it is, whether it be forced labor or sex slavery, either way, it is a crime against humanity. It is an evil that has reemerged in our day and age. It is absolutely disgusting that this is happening. So we look at this, we look at the side, global findings, prevalence 45.8 million. 58% of those living in slavery are in 5 countries. That is India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Uzbekistan. That is, you know, as slavery as a whole.
That's over there.
Right. Now, this is outside. I mean, but this is a global problem, not just here in the United States. So now we're starting out in the macro, and we're going to bring it down to the micro as we go further in this broadcast. But I want you to know the scope of what we're looking at here. So what are factors that explain and predict the prevalence of modern slavery? And this goes across the board. You've got economic reasons, cultural reasons, things like refugee populations, personal security. I mean, things that are lacking in these countries lead to slavery, right? As a whole, slavery as a whole. This is a 7-minute video. We're going to watch a bit of this. And this is going to kind of cover what we just talked about, but it will go into a little bit more. This is a video from the Daily Conversation. It's a video I watched a while back. It's actually a really good video. Go to their channel. That's the Daily Conversation. The link is in the description below. Watch their other content. You know, like and subscribe if you like what you see.
Slavery used to look like this. Then it evolved into this, and today it looks like this. In fact, there are an estimated 45.8 million people living in modern slavery across 167 different countries. They fall into 3 general categories: children held in the commercial sex trade, adults held in the commercial sex trade, and any other laborer made to work through force, fraud, or coercion. The trafficking victim often looks like anybody else at work, in a mine, on a farm, in a factory. Many are lured by promises of a steady job in another country, only to have their passports confiscated when they arrive. However, many slaves work in their native countries, or even the cities where they were born. According to the Global Slavery Index, these 10 countries are home to the most modern slaves. They each suffer from income inequality, discrimination and classism, and entrenched corruption. Number 10, Indonesia, produces about 35% of the world's palm oil. The many small palm plantations present an immense challenge to inspectors trying to crack down on child labor. The country's many islands are also home to tens of thousands of enslaved fishermen trafficked from Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, and Cambodia. Number 9 is the Democratic Republic of Congo. 20,000 of the DRC's more than 870,000 slaves live in one of the most hellish landscapes.
Did you see that? 873,000 slaves. These numbers increase. This is a countdown, not a count up. We're counting down to the number 1.
Not meaning to interrupt you like that, but not only that, but they were saying that there was only 7 million throughout the world. So if you figure 800,000 just in that area.
It was 45.8 million, not 7 million.
Right. But they were saying before it was only 7, and that's during the Obama administration.
Yeah. Well, it's much higher. It's 45.8.
And that's the reason when I found out, I gave that
mine in the east of the country. The terrorist group Boko Haram gets overshadowed by ISIS.
So Nigeria, we're looking at 875,500 slaves, 0.5% of the 182.2 million total population.
Although it kills more people. When it comes to enslavement, one of its tactics is to give Nigerian entrepreneurs loans and then force them to join their group if they fail to repay fast enough. 7th is Russia. 55% of the slaves there work in construction. Foreigners are lured mainly from nearby Azerbaijan, the Stans, Ukraine, and North Korea, thanks to this border on the far eastern edge of Russia.
Let's look at this again. This is 1.01 million slaves in Russia. Over 1 million slaves in Russia. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, thanks to this border on the far eastern edge of Russia. The North Korean government is the world's largest single slaveholder. Not only does it force more than 1 million of its people to toil in labor camps and other similarly hopeless situations, but it actually loans out some people to work in neighboring China and Russia, then pockets most of their wages. This exploitation generates about $2.3 billion each year for the Kim Jong-un regime. The 5th most enslaved country, Uzbekistan, is the world's 6th largest producer of cotton. It has benefited from forced labor as the government.
If you don't know where Uzbekistan is, it's near Afghanistan. It's in that area. 1.24 million slaves. Right? I want you to think about the scope of this.
It puts more than 1 million people to work using threats of debt bondage, heavy fines, asset confiscation, and police intimidation. Slave recruiters in Bangladesh promise poor families that their boys will be given a job, only to be enslaved on a faraway island and beaten to clean fish for up to 24 hours straight. Often, these fish are exported as cat food for our pets here in the West, and sometimes the boys meet a gruesome death when they are eaten by tigers while searching for firewood.
This is the point I wanted to get
to. 3rd
to.
is Pakistan, which has suffered through decades of conflict, terrorism, and displacement, especially along its northwestern border with Afghanistan. Its provinces have not raised the minimum age of marriage, which has allowed the widespread problem of forced and child weddings to continue. Over 250 million Chinese have migrated within the country to find better opportunities, creating the ideal condition
3.39 million slaves in China.
For human trafficking. Each year, 58 million children are left behind as their parents search for work in one of China's many booming cities. And every year, up to 70,000 children fall into forced begging, illegal adoption, and sex slavery. And number 1 is India, which has by far the most victims of modern slavery.
18.4 million slaves.
While economic growth has greatly reduced the percentage of its citizens living in poverty, the country's sheer size still results in more than 270 million Indians living on less than $2 a day. It's unsurprising then that
here's the point
by consuming products that were, at some point in their supply chain, touched by slave labor.
You see this? There are things that we consume here in the United States that at some point at some point there were slaves employed. Well, shouldn't use the word employed, I suppose, but slave labor was used in the production of said product.
Mm-hmm.
I would go as far as to say there's probably a lot more of what we consume as Americans, whether it be food or clothing or whatever it may be, that is the case.
While it can be hopeless to be a slave, the rest of us can
let's finish one.
Help by raising awareness, helping an anti-slavery group, or pressuring government officials around the world to take action.
So those are organizations. I invite you to look those up.
Awareness, helping an anti-slavery group, or
so we've got Doors to Freedom, Voices for Freedom, ATIPS, the Freedom Project. I do want to say this, that there is an American organization, right? And I think it is later on in this video, they do talk about it, where, but I'm just, if you want to see it, you can just go ahead and hit the link and watch it yourself. But they go to other countries and rescue women and children that are being sex trafficked. That's what they do.
Yes.
Let's see.
And there's a lot more that even do that, that I've found, which will come up into some of our other episodes.
So we've got Maya's here. We've got Snowman here as well. Snowman says, did you see Antifa attacking a small Pray for Tommy protest in San Francisco? I did not see that.
No, and I'm going to have to look into that. Because I've been following and gathering information up on Tommy.
That is definitely something we're going to want to cover.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and that will be something that is going to be most likely, I would believe, in between what's going on with our series here and with Tommy.
Right.
To mix it up so that not everybody's getting bored with what we're doing.
Right. So I do want to say something, that today is Saturday, right? So it's Saturday night and we're streaming tonight. We had intended to stream last night about this time after Mass Faith 3 had finished their live stream. But Kelly and I both separately had the same issue. So I didn't get any sleep the night before, but it wasn't because I was having, problems or issues or something negative was coming up. I went and made a comment on Twitter regarding Nigel Farage. Michelle from Mass Faith 3 had made a comment there. And I follow Nigel Farage too. And I just made a comment that I was glad to see my friend Michelle had made it on the air. And it was just comments after comments after comments on me. I bet there was several hundred total. If it wasn't comments directed directly to me, it was responses to other comments, right? And so I just got caught up on Twitter, which social media is the devil. I'm telling you, it is.
It is.
And I spent all night pretty much mocking leftists in the UK. It was actually kind of fun. I feel bad about it now afterwards. That wasn't very Christ-like of me, but it was what I did all night Thursday night. And so I was really tired. I did go to the range yesterday, though, and I shot the best shot group I've ever shot, I think, in my life.
That was awesome. I cannot believe how well you shot.
Yeah, so I had to do a barrel change on my precision rifle. The reason, found out the reason why it wasn't cycling right was the gas ports. The gas port on the barrel was wrong. And so I got a brand new barrel and all that, got all that replaced and got it fixed and got it back. But I needed to redo my zero, right? Because there was a barrel change. I needed to get that dialed in. And my very last shot group was smaller than a dime. And it was dead on, I mean, right dead on center in the bullseye. I mean, it was beautiful. I was pretty proud of it. I've been singing my own praises now since yesterday afternoon.
Yes, he has been, and he did very, very well.
That was really good. It was really good. And then you had your own thing going on in your life while you didn't really sleep Thursday night.
Yes, my son, and I want to thank everybody and anybody that is in the live chat here for praying for my oldest son. He had some issues when he was younger and had fallen out of a tree stand, went into a coma, and long story short, lost his reading capabilities and wanted to go for hunting rifle, just innocent, one of our God-given rights, and filled out an application. He had a charge against him, unfortunately, but it was a lowercase charge, but yet it was a charge that with the fact that he could not read, my son-in-law filled the top out and didn't answer the questions. The gun owner filled the gunsmith, or the gun dealership, I should say, filled out the boxes and filled them out as standard, and he signed.
Yeah.
And he signed with the doctor. And when he did, unfortunately, the federal government stepped in.
Right.
And
so what was the outcome of the
year and $2,500 worth of fines?
So you were worried.
And
you were worried. You were worried about what was going to happen because you had court yesterday. So
yes.
So can you tell our viewers just real quick how that turned out?
He went and he got 3 months of probation, which if he paid off his fines, which was when he spoke to the judge had said, which he was one of two that spoke to the judge, that the judge was very thankful and he apologized for taking the judge's time up.
Yeah.
And he said, and the judge gave him the basic minimal fine that he could give him.
Yeah.
The basic minimal court costs that he could give him.
Right.
And he put money in an escrow because they did not have it figured out. So he is paid far above the amount that needs to be paid. He will be getting a check back. But not only that, the judge had said that if he did pay his fine ahead of time, because they were giving him a $25 babysitting, that means the probationary officer watches him. Yeah. A $25 a month fee that he would then be able to have 1 month of probation only instead of 3 months. He paid it all in full.
Good.
And they said it was way there and above, and he will be getting a return check amount. So with all your prayers,
$35 a month
was answered. And I mean, it was, and even the attorney said, and I will jokingly say, and I'm not jokingly saying this, but I am jokingly saying this, that when the attorney said that he hoped that he was the one that had helped do this work, because I made the comment that this was God.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I hope I had something to do with it. I said, this is all God, but I still love you in Christ.
Well, I'll tell you, $35 a month for probation is actually really cheap.
It was $25.
Or $25. Here in Indiana, and I only know this because I had a friend that was on probation. He had a DUI, and he was paying $125 a month for, was it a year or was it 2 years? Like, it was a long time he was on probation. Yeah.
Yeah, so my son was definitely blessed with all of your prayers, and I want to thank each and every one of you that have prayed and kept our family in prayer, because, I mean, this was a wrongful, 100% wrongful charge against him. I mean, to the point that even the cop that came and addressed him could have cuffed him and stuffed him and put him in the back end of the vehicle. Did not do that. Said, show up for your hearing. He showed up for his preliminary. He went and did all this stuff. And yet, when he came out of it and he walked out, I mean, I did a very quick live stream. It was everything for me to keep my composure. And my son thanked all of you guys. So it's up on my channel, Kellie PD Fam. And you'll see my son, and he's just in shock.
Yeah.
So I thank you all.
Yeah. No problem. We definitely had you in our prayers. So that's basically why we didn't go live last night. I was beat, and I was
emotionally beat.
Yeah. So we went ahead and postponed it till tonight. But from now on, unless something comes up, we'll be going live. About this same time, but it'll be on Friday nights.
Exactly.
Snowman says, glad to hear it all worked out.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to move back on. We have a documentary here. We're, of course, not going to go through all of this. We're just not going to be able to. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is tell you, and the link is in the description. It's Britain's Sex Gangs documentary. It's 48 minutes and 20 seconds long, with including advertisements. So I think what I'm going to do is just put that out there. Go ahead and watch it. That'll talk about Britain's sex gangs.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
So, well, we could probably play a little bit of it.
Yeah, I would hit a little bit of it to give them a little tidbit of what they're getting into.
Looking at it, and we saw ribs. My technician, he said,
yeah. I mean, across Leeds, sexual exploitation is a massive problem. The girls are told this is how you behave. You have sex with other people. If you don't, you're a bit, immature, or you're a bit out of touch. And I think the girls just gradually get used to it. And some of the lads are very clever in terms of, I've had quite a few girls saying, oh no, they don't want to have sex with me. They really respect me. The guys will wait a week, a month, however long, and then the pressure will start. So the girls have been kind of lulled into this false sense of security that this isn't about sex. This guy is okay. What happened at this park?
This is where it all happened with Kibbe, the first time I was 13. This is when they brought me. I know from like 7 o'clock we started getting dark. It's like 3 to 4 o'clock at night.
And did lots of different men keep arriving, or were they all there from the start?
Some of them stayed and more people came, and some of them left and more people came.
This is a 13-year-old girl. We're going to leave it there. A 13-year-old girl. She was groomed by a guy. And then she ends up, I think that was a park, where multiple men rape her. And this is
she was. I seen that. Yes.
So
she was gang rape.
So this is happening all over, and there's all kinds of videos that you'll find on YouTube. There's all kinds of information on this. There is an epidemic in Britain right now, in the UK, of these grooming gangs and rape gangs going on, where young British girls, we're talking a 13-year-old girl here is when it got started. They're getting gang raped. They're being, basically turned into prostitutes through this process. They're forced into using addictive drugs. They get addicted. Once they get addicted to a drug, they're reliant on their abusers for their drugs, and they'll do whatever it is that they tell them to do. It's absolutely disgusting. And that leads to a point that I want to make here. And this goes not just in the United States, but this is in Canada, this is in the UK, this is in continental Europe, this is anywhere you go, right? And but now this isn't the case for every one of these girls or women. But when a man pays for sex with a prostitute, it is highly likely the person you are paying, right, is forced into that. They're not a prostitute of their own free will, right? They are sex slaves.
Of course, at that age.
For profit.
I mean, they're a runaway.
Well, when you're talking about young girls, it absolutely is. But I mean, when you're, I mean, say it's a grown woman, even, right? So
that's where they're homeless and they're needy of something. Yeah.
And then the next point I wanted to make is we know statistically, right? This has been, these statistics are out there. 70% of Christian men are addicted to pornography, right? And we're going to see here later how pornography affects men, right? Hyperactive sex drives, it destroys their views on intimacy, and it's degrading to women, right? And so I haven't seen a statistic on this, right? Because I don't know that the data has been collected. But logic and reason would dictate, right? You just use some logic and reason here. If 70% of Christian men are addicted to pornography, how many of those Christian men, we're not talking about professing non-practicing, we're talking Christian men who are in pews every week, right? Going to church with their families. How many of them are paying for prostitution? How many of them are paying for sex? How many Christian men? I would say it's probably not 70%, but I would say it might be as high as 25 or 30% of those same men. Possibly. If I had to throw around a figure that was a range, I would say probably 10 to maybe 25% of those 70%. That's shocking. That's very shocking. And these are supposed to be moral people in our communities.
Yeah, and unfortunately, and because I know that you're Catholic, that a lot of them are in Catholicism, but yet there is a percentage that is in other religious backgrounds, but they nail Catholicism heavily.
Right. So there recently I saw something. I'm just going to mention this real quick. There was recently a sex abuse scandal, like a massive sex abuse scandal that I saw reported on from the Assemblies of God. Right.
Exactly.
But I haven't seen any mention about it in the mainstream media. Nobody's talking about it. It's still Catholic Church, Catholic Church, Catholic Church. Right.
Exactly.
Now, here's an interesting fact about the Catholic Church, that of all the denominations in the United States, they have the lowest participation of Catholics, right? Only 20% of Catholics attend Mass on a weekly basis. Only 20%. If you go back, say, 50 to 60 years ago, that number was the opposite. 80% of Catholics attended Mass on a weekly basis. And there's a lot of reasons why, too. I mean, if you're a Catholic and you've been divorced and remarried without an annulment, you are barred from being in, full communion with the church. Like, you cannot take communion. And those people just fall away from the church. They're still Catholic. They're just not in full communion with the church. Is there a sex abuse scandal in the church? Yes, absolutely it is. And it's the gay, what it is the gay lobby. There's been an infiltration of the clergy in the church by homosexual priests. Those are the priests that are responsible for this. I'm not saying homosexuals are all pedophiles. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that many of these priests are. When you Church Militant, which is a Catholic YouTube channel, they recently did a video about this, that the percentage of Catholic priests that are pedophiles is something like 10 times higher than any other demographic in the United States. It's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. And I'm a Catholic. Right?
I didn't know that.
I mean, just because it happens in the church and I'm a member of that church doesn't mean I condone it, right? And that's a charge that Catholics often get, right? Well, you condone, priests that no, and that's in clear violation of church teachings. There's nowhere in the church that says thou art permitted to, you know what I mean? Like this is a perversion within the church. Now, I will say this, that Pope Benedict was elected as Pope specifically to end this. And then just suddenly overnight, he resigns, only the second Pope to ever do that. And no real justification was ever really given. And then we get Pope Francis. I will say this, Pope Francis, I believe, is part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I believe he's part of the problem. I believe he's a false Pope. Pope Benedict is still the legitimate, true Pope of the Catholic Church.
I agree in that regard. I really, really do.
So, and the real motivation of all of this, I believe, is to destroy the church from within. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I feel it's a deep dark state, the Illuminati, but it has a lot to do with it. The Rothschild, Soros.
Right. So, Stevie Crockett's Outdoors says that it's disgusting and hang them by you know what. I agree. Any priest that is either openly gay or has been, found to have abused children should be immediately defrocked. Those that have, of course, abused children not only should be defrocked, but should be turned over to the authorities. And I don't think that that's happening anymore, but under Pope Benedict, they were beginning to do that. I mean, the church was moving in the right direction of purging this stain from the church. Snowman says the Vatican, like everything else, will have different factions. Well, the Vatican has all kinds of factions. I mean, you just look at the priesthood, all the different. You've got your Jesuits and. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank, and I'm Catholic. How come I'm drawing a blank, Kelly? Dominicans.
Because I just drew a blank too.
Yeah.
Because I was.
Well, anyway, you've got the different.
My husband said, because my husband's family is Catholic.
Yeah.
And
so anyway, you've got these different priestly orders in the church, but there's even other organizations outside of the priestly orders as well. Yeah, there's all kinds of factions in the Catholic Church. All kinds of factions. The next article, again, this link is in the description below. When sex trafficking goes unnoticed in America. This is from The Atlantic, author Priscilla Alvarez, February 23rd, 2016.
Really sad.
How do you identify sex trafficking victims when such cases go largely undetected or unreported? It's an issue with which law enforcement agencies in the U.S. continually struggle. Detective Bill Wolf with the Northern Virginia Human Trafficking Task Force has experienced this firsthand. Over the course of his tenure, he's interviewed over 300 victims. In many cases, those who've been exploited believe that they are offenders, Wolf told me. They fear law enforcement because they are technically committing a crime, and that is prostitution. The problem is that they are being treated as criminals when they are the victims.
Exactly.
Right? In any other crime, right? Let's say, Kelly, you and I are going to rob a bank. Right? Mm-hmm. Me and you are going to rob a bank, and we force somebody by gunpoint to in some way participate. They're forced. They don't have a choice. When that goes to trial, that person will likely, if they are charged with a crime, likely will not. If they will likely be acquitted if it is proven that they in fact did not have a choice in the matter. So why is this different? Why is this different?
And the thing is that their guilt. They
Right.
feel like they have shamed themselves, and that because of the fact that they are under the suspicion of being a prostitute, a whore, and I
Right.
apologize for using that word, but
Right.
that's the way they feel. I mean, I've talked to women that have been in this industry, that are in strip clubs, places like that, and they've been pushed into doing things that they don't want to do, but they have to do.
Right.
So what do they want to do? They have to sit there and keep their mouth shut.
Right.
Because if they don't, then their pimps are going to come after them.
Right.
And they're going to be told that no matter what, if you open your mouth up,
Right.
you're either going to be dead or you're going to have the crap beat out of you.
Right. Now I'm gonna bring out something here, and it's in the text. You can see this, and I've talked about this many times over the years. Right. This is actually a talking point from the left. Right. It is legalizing prostitution the best way to tackle sex trafficking? So of course prostitution is immoral, right? Whether it's legal or not, even whether the prostitute is forced into it or is doing it willingly, either way, participating in prostitution is wrong, right? It's immoral, it's wrong. However, this is the argument. Let me finish my argument. This is the argument, right? Is that if it is legalized, then it can be, one, regulated, and two, these women would gain the protection of law enforcement instead of being fearful of law enforcement. So it wouldn't be a final solution, but it would be an initial move towards it. There would be other things that would take place, right? So no longer would they be in need of a pimp, right? No longer would these, would there still be illegal prostitution? Yes. But if I think you would see a huge decline in the number of sex workers. And I think you would see sex trafficking almost completely dry up. I do think that is the case, but that isn't the be all end all to this solution here in the United States. So that is the argument. So, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? If the victims are being treated as criminals, right, and the entire industry is underground, right, and those who are forced into it are shamed, how are we really going to tackle this? Right? How are we going to tackle it?
Really, yeah. And Trump talks about putting a wall up, and the VOP sits there and they said, yeah, we need a wall, but we also need boots on the ground. That's true. You're going to need both. Right.
There's so much to a solution to this, and I think in our final video that we do on this topic, we've got at least 2, if not 3 more videos to do. We will discuss, Kelly and I, with our viewers, solutions for this, and the solution that we come together collectively to decide what we believe to be the best solution may not be what I just mentioned. Like, this is just an argument for it, right? This is an argument that I have just discussed.
Calling to see you know,
Right.
what people feel, and I can set up an open
Mhm.
line where people can call in and,
We can't do that.
you know, give their opinions and see what it's and what they feel and how we should go about doing this.
So the Department of Homeland Security defines human trafficking as a modern day form of slavery involving the illegal trade of people for exploitation or commercial gain. In 2012, the International Labor Organization estimated that there are 20.9 million human trafficking victims worldwide. According to the United States or the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, sexual exploitation is the most commonly identified form ahead of forced labor. Numbers released by the Human National Trafficking Resource Center suggest that also holds true in the U.S., where more than 4,000 cases of sex trafficking were reported. And as a whole, human trafficking is a lucrative industry that around the globe takes in $150 billion. Now, those figures there seem very low.
They're way off because I found higher.
Yeah, we've seen much higher. I mean, we look in a previous stream. We saw, this was official statistics, that estimated 300,000 just here in the United States, Americans, mostly women and young girls, but also men and boys, are trafficked per year. So if you want to read the rest of this article, again, it's from The Atlantic. Priscilla Alvarez was the journalist on this, February 23rd, 2016. The link is in the description below. So 11 facts about human trafficking. This seems like maybe we discussed this before, but if we did, we're just gonna go over it again here.
We did, but we didn't. It wasn't set up the way it's set up in this aspect because they keep using the same picture.
Right.
But this is a step by step.
Right.
Of how it was done.
So
and this is the reason why I sent it to you.
Right. So 11 facts about human trafficking. Again, the link is below if you want to look at this yourself. Number one, globally, the average cost of a slave is $90. Think about that. The cost of a human being is $90. I paid more for a pair of tennis shoes. Think about that. $90. That's how much a human life costs. That is just disgusting. Trafficking primarily involves exploitation, which comes in many forms, including forcing victims into prostitution, subjecting victims to slavery or involuntary servitude, and compelling victims to commit sex acts for the purpose of creating pornography. According to some estimates, approximately 80% of trafficking involves sexual exploitation, and 19% involves labor exploitation. There are approximately 20 to 30 million slaves in the world today. That figure is low, very low. I don't see a date on this, but that figure is low.
Yeah, I mean, and if you even look at it in Hollywood's aspect,
right,
that is so low.
That is a topic for another video we're going to get into. According to the U.S. Department, 600,000 to 800,000 people are trafficked across international borders every year, of which 80% are female and half are children. Number 6, the average age a teen enters the sex trade in the U.S. is 12 to 14 years old. Many victims are runaway girls who were sexually abused as children. I will say that many women who get into the porn industry were molested as young girls. Many.
Yep.
California harbors 3 of the FBI's 13 highest sex trafficking areas in the nation: Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego. Number 8, the National Human Trafficking Hotline receives more calls from Texas than any other state in the U.S. 15% of those calls are from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Between 14,500 and 17,000 people are trafficked into the U.S. each year. That's a figure we've seen previously that we put in another video. These are foreign nationals. Human trafficking is the third largest international crime industry behind illegal drugs and arms trafficking. Now, I can tell you that this is old because in a previous official source that we discussed in a previous video, it has since surpassed arms trafficking and is set to surpass illegal drugs as well.
Yes.
It reportedly generates a profit of $32 billion every year. I'm sure it's much higher than that. Of that number, $15.5 billion is made in industrialized countries. Half. The International Labor Organization estimates that women and girls represent the largest share of forced labor victims, with 11.4 million traffic victims, 55%, compared to 9.5 million, 45%, which are men. Maya says, this is so sick. The government just wants more money at any cost. Regulating prostitution. What has our society become? So Maya, that is a good point, right? Regulating immorality, right? Look, I'm with you. Like, prostitution should not be a thing, but prohibition didn't work with alcohol either, and that's not right. This is infinitely worse, but there's a sickness, an underlying sickness, and that's what we need to get to. We need to remove that. We need to remove that underlying sickness.
And
we need to.
It's a biblical comment.
We need to remove that underlying sickness. That's where we need to focus. Like, prevention is better than a cure, right? So, but legalizing prostitution, I'm not saying we should. I'm just saying that legalizing or regulating prostitution would go a long way to allowing us to expose these sex traffickers, right? These prostitutes would then have protection under the law. That's my only point to it. Is prostitution immoral? Absolutely, it's immoral.
Yeah, and look at Las Vegas. They make it moral, and it's not.
Well, they've made it legal. There's only one morality. They can claim that it's moral, but there's only one morality.
Exactly, but I'm saying in general, that's what they look at it as.
Right. So this is an article from December 4th, 2014, from the New Republic by Juan David Romero. Why do we treat child sex trafficking victims like criminals? Tina Front was only 9 when her foster parents sold her for sex for the first time. I discussed this in a previous stream, didn't I, Kelly? Foster parents. Many of these children are coming from foster care. And I said many of these foster parents, though I had not seen anything official, and this still isn't official, it's just a claim made to a journalist, but that many of these foster parents are selling the children themselves, either pimping them out or selling them to sex traffickers, right? At 13, she became friends with a man who convinced her to run away with him from Chicago to Ohio. He then trafficked her all over the U.S. in states such as Iowa, Arkansas, and Atlanta. Well, Atlanta's a city, but Georgia, according to Front. At 15, she was back in Chicago when police arrested her on the street, charging her with prostitution, and sent her to a juvenile detention center in Cook County, Illinois. She's a survivor. But she's treated as a prostitute at age 15. She's not even of legal age to consent to even, normal sex. Hey, to law enforcement, if you're watching this, listen up. You find an underage girl, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, whatever, that is a prostitute, she's not doing it of her own free will. She's not a criminal. She's a victim and should be treated as such.
Even 17 years of age, I mean, still, until they're an adult age of 18,
they should not be treated as a criminal. They should
exactly.
not. But that doesn't mean that they don't do anything about it, right? Put them in foster care, right? Put them in a group home. Find them a safe place to be where they can be a normal child, can get the therapy they need, and hopefully become, functioning adults. You don't throw them in a juvenile detention center into the system. In the United States, once somebody gets in the system, it's so hard to get out, right? I mean, when you get out of whether it's prison or jail or a juvenile detention center, what happens? You go on parole or some type of probation, right? And you're under a microscope that whole time. And if you mess up, guess what? You go back to prison. You go back to jail. You go back to the juvenile detention center.
And they keep doing it over and over again at that point in time because they know nothing other than that.
Right. Right. So once you get in the system, it's very hard to get out of it. You're and they're doing this to minor. It's aggravating. Absolutely aggravating. So here we go. This is the U.S. Department of State from 2001 to 2009 is these figures. You'll find the link in the description below. Demand and sex trafficking. This is from Mark P. Lagone, Director, Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons. It is a pleasure to be with Shared Hope International to help release the documentary and report Demand. Congresswoman Smith is a leader in the movement to end human trafficking at both the level of policy and level of services for victims, which is so rare. I want to thank you personally for initiating the research behind being presented. I commend Shared Hope International for putting a spotlight on the demand for victims of sex trafficking, because this demand creates the perverse market in people put up for sale that the U.S. government is dedicated to ending. The research conducted by Share Hope confirms something important. Despite very different economic realities, GDPs, cultural contexts, and levels of government commitment to confront human trafficking, the 4 countries in which Shared Hope worked all share a situation of sex trafficking and sex tourism ruining lives, yet going largely unnoticed due to, as the report says, a culture of tolerance. So, here's an interesting point. There are few pretty women or voluntary cases of prostitution in real life. Prostitution, children, women, even men are trapped by the rapacious greed of their pimps and ravenous desire of Johns enabling their victimization. We need to educate our own citizens to this fact, not just confront Europe and Japan about it. Shared Hope International's important research and products devoted to ending the ferocious demand for prostituted people is an excellent step towards ending sex trafficking as a whole. We need to focus on the Johns. We need to focus on the pimps. That's who we need to focus on, because these women, these children, they are slaves. When they get tied into a pimp, they can't just leave. They don't have a choice. They're slaves. So now we're going to get into the underlying cause. Why are men so hyper sexually today compared to 150 years ago? Prostitution, of course, has existed forever. I mean, it's often referred to as the oldest industry in human industry, right? Sex, prostitution is a very, very old institution, right? But men today,
the biblical times,
right? But men today have a hyperactive sexuality, right? Hyperactive sex drive, I should say. Hyperactive sex drive. Why is that? Why is the demand for sex so much higher now than it was 60, 70 years ago? Well, we're going to get into that. So 60 years ago, what happened? Pornography, Playboy magazine. Both men and women look at pornography, mostly men. And many of these men are addicted. There's an addictive nature to this. And when you understand brain chemistry, you'll see why it's addictive, right? They get a man, well, for one, men are stimulated visually more than anything, right? And that's why there's a draw to pornography, because it's instant stimulation, right? Instant. But what happens is the pleasure as parts of the brain become overstimulated, and it requires more and more stimulation to get the same effect. Just like a drug addict, someone who's addicted to heroin takes greater and greater doses of the drug to get the same effect. And in fact, I've heard it said, now this is the case for heroin, but that no other fix is ever as good as that very first one. And the rest of their lives, or the rest of the time they're addicted, those heroin addicts are chasing that high that they're never going to get again.
That's the reason why they OD.
Exactly. And so what ends up happening with porn addiction is they end up going to greater, not just consuming larger quantities of it, but more intense forms of pornography, right? They may start off with softcore pornography that actually doesn't show any penetration. It's just basically topless nudity, simulating sex, to your more I guess more like erotic, more female centrist pornography might go into your more mainstream, but eventually it gets into BDSM and weird fetishes and bondage and porn that's geared towards rape fantasies. I mean, just this is disgusting things, right? Well, what happens to these men that are partaking in this, right? And so studies have found, and we're going to kind of go over some of this. The studies that have found is that this causes a hypersexuality or a hypersex drive in men. But what it also causes is a type of erectile dysfunction, in that, now this is reversible. This is reversible if they stop consuming pornography. It may take as much as a few months, but this is reversible, right? But what ends up happening is the brain is so accustomed to this visual stimulation that being in the actual physical presence of whether their wife or another woman or whatever, that actual sex is not stimulating enough. That to be in the presence of a real woman is not stimulating enough, and they're unable to maintain, to either achieve or maintain an erection without that pornography. And eventually it can progress to the point where even that won't do it. And what we're seeing is that in the United States, there's this epidemic of erectile dysfunction among men, even in their young 20s, right? So millennials and Generation Z have something that I didn't have when not growing up, and something that didn't exist when you grew up, Kelly. And that is the internet, right? I mean, internet was in its infancy in the 90s when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a whole lot of pornography online, but what you did find was basically just stills, right? Pornography was still, like actual pornography was still hard to come by, right? And this wasn't something I ever consumed when I was in high school, but there was people who did, right? But the millennial generation, and then the newest adults coming in that just now turning 18, Generation Z, they have grown up with broadband internet, where you can go to these websites on demand and get just whatever you want for free on demand at any time. And we're seeing that kids as young as middle school are consuming and becoming addicted to pornography. Now, this leads to another problem too, is that they have an unhealthy image of what actual intimacy is, because all they know is what they see, right? They haven't had any healthy, intimate relationships. And so, this also makes it very difficult for them to communicate with women. And on top of that, social media as well, right? Whereas now it's very difficult for men and women to meet outside of an online environment, right? Seems like everybody today wants to meet their this weekend's date on Tinder or, Match.com or just whatever, right? They're not actually meeting in person, and they don't want to be approached by someone of the opposite sex when they're out. Whereas before that was the norm, right? So now you've got these men who are hypersexualized, right? They have a degrading view of women. They don't see the value of women anymore. They never have, likely, right? To them, women are just a means to an end, right? Their sexual gratification, that's it. Their morality has been stripped from them, right? And they're incapable, or it's at least very difficult for them to meet women, right? And so they have these desires. All men have sexual desires. All men have a sexual appetite that I don't think women truly understand. Or I'm talking about a healthy libido for men, right? Men have a libido, a very high libido naturally. But this is even above that, right? So they've got this gratification that they have, it's like an itch they have to scratch. So what do? What do? They call an escort service. They hire an escort. They pick up someone on a street corner, right? There is your demand. And these are the underlying issues that have caused it. And it all leads back to Playboy magazine, Hustler, Penthouse, these pornography studios producing pornographic films. It's even more than even that. The sexualization of children at young ages. You're seeing sexual, intimate content on television. We're not just cable.
You know what really gets me is right now, Netflix they've sat there and it actually condones for not pedophilia.
Yeah, they recently got called out and busted for, there was 2 things that they were streaming that was essentially child pornography. And I haven't heard anything new about it, but I'm to understand some people lost their jobs. Pretty sure.
Yeah, and
people should go to jail.
In that now.
Yeah, people should go to prison for that.
And that's Netflix. So, I mean, you're looking at, okay, you've got Dish Network, you've got DirecTV, you've got cable, you've got HughesNet. These things have got their own porn, channels on there.
Right.
Look at what's going on in that regards. But then, not only that, some of the research I've just done here in the last couple of days that actually have organizations that are pushing pedophilia. They actually have a list where you sign up for it.
That's crazy. That is.
So that's going to be in one of our next, upcoming.
We're definitely going to. We're definitely going to talk.
It's really disgusting.
We're definitely
what they think they want to do.
There is a push to normalize pedophilia. I mean, and the LGBT alphabet soup in some of the organizations that put out whatever their conglomeration of letters is, there is a P for pedosexual.
Exactly.
pedophilia is not a sexual orientation. It is a sickness. It is a perversion.
Exactly.
So fightthenewdrug.org, 3 reasons why watching porn is harmful. This is from June 20th, 2018. This is very recent. This was just, a couple weeks ago. I'm not seeing an author's name on this. Maybe it's at the bottom. We'll see. It took decades. Is it?
It may be AI. I believe it may be anonymous.
We'll see.
Because when I looked through it, I didn't see it.
So it took decades. It took decades for society to believe the science that proved smoking cigarettes was harmful. And we are learning a similar lesson with porn in our world today. And since we're an awareness campaign, first and foremost, we're all about getting these facts into the light. Number one, if you want to read this whole article, the link is in the description. Number one, porn can change and rewire a consumer's brain. I talked about this, right? Thanks to modern science, now we know that the brain goes on changing throughout life, constantly rewiring itself and laying down new nerve connections, and that is particularly true in our youth.
Mm-hmm.
There's some pretty fierce competition between brain pathways, and those that don't get used enough will likely be replaced. Use it or lose it, as they say. Only the strong survive. That's where porn comes in. Porn happens to be fantastic at forming new, long-lasting pathways in the brain. In fact, porn is such a voracious competitor that hardly any other activity can compete with it, including actual sex with a partner. Remember when I said that with the erectile function that can be caused from porn addiction, that even sex with a real partner is not stimulating enough. That's right. Porn can actually overpower your brain's natural ability to have real sex. Why? As Dr. Norman Dewage, a researcher at Columbia University, explains, porn creates the perfect conditions and triggers the release of the right chemicals to make lasting changes in your brain. Dopamine is a very powerful chemical in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
We get dopamine hits from all kinds of things. All kinds of, from social media we get it. That social media is also addictive. I may have that addiction. I don't think I have that. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I might have that addiction. We'll see. First step is accepting, right? 2, a porn habit can dramatically escalate into unexpected territory, right? Like any potentially addictive substance, porn triggers the release of dopamine into a part of the brain called the reward center. Social media does this too. Not to the same extent, though. Basically, the reward center's job is to make you feel good when you do something healthy, like eating a great meal, having sex, or getting a good workout. The high you get makes you want to repeat the behavior again and again. This is your brain's way of saying, hey, yeah, good job, boy. Good job, good job, good job. Keep doing this, and you'll keep getting this, right? Your brain is hardwired to motivate you to do things that will improve your health and chance of survival, right? This is just how our brains are made up, right? Porn is an escalating behavior because as some users develop tolerance, the porn that used to excite them starts to seem boring. Predictably, they often try to compensate by spending more time with porn and or seeking out more hardcore material in an effort to regain the excitement they used to feel. And many users find themes of aggression, violence, and increasingly edgy acts creeping into their porn habits and fantasies. But no matter how shocking their taste becomes, you can bet there will be pornographers waiting to sell it to them. That's exactly what I was telling you. I mean, this is nothing new to me because I researched this a long time ago for something that I wrote. Number 3, porn can be an obsessive compulsion or even an addiction. And this comes right back to that dopamine, right? Dopamine is an addictive chemical in your brain. Research shows that all the forms of online entertainment like gambling, gaming, surfing, and social networking, porn has the strongest tendency to be addictive. When porn enters the brain, it triggers the reward center to start pumping out dopamine, which sets off a cascade of chemicals, including a protein called delta phos B. Its regular job is to build new nerve pathways to mentally connect what you're doing, the porn you watch, to the pleasure you feel. Those strong new memories outcompete other connections in the brain, making it easier and easier to return to porn. As porn users become desensitized from repeated overloads of dopamine, they often find they can't feel normal without a dopamine high. Some report feeling anxious or down until they can get back to their porn. As they delve deeper into the habit, their porn of choice often turns increasingly hardcore, and many who try to break their porn habits report finding it really hard to stop.
Not only that, but one of the things that also comes up is that if they can't get their fix,
right,
it turns into a form of harm.
Right. So to give a frame of reference, let's talk about normal male. Let's talk about normal male libido, right? So normally a young man, let's say a guy who's 20 years old or 21 or 22 years old, right? A guy in high school, right? At those age, a man at that age will be stimulated naturally by thoughts, by just seeing a woman she sees that's attractive. It doesn't mean he's going to act upon it or do anything. It's just something going on in his brain, right? And men also at that age will have erections, sometimes for no reason at all. They just get them, right? And it can be frustrating at that age, particularly in high school. It can be very, very, very frustrating for young men, right? You have all this influx of hormones. But as that man ages into his mid-20s, late 20s, and into his 30s, that calms down. Particularly in their 30s, it begins to slow down gradually, right? And there's a large testosterone drop, level in testosterone drop in men once they reach their 40s, right? Typically, right? So now a healthy man, and I'm bringing this up because it's a frame of reference here, right? A man with a healthy libido, right, may wake up in the morning and have, been visited by the morning wood fairy, right? And he may think about his partner or a fantasy person in their head a few times a day. Like this may happen. This is a normal thing for men, right? It's normal. It's healthy. This is just how men work, right? Men, the number one motivation for men in life, no matter what it is, all comes down to obtaining a mate or sexual gratification of some kind, right? This is
procreation.
Procreation.
They want their genes to go on.
Right, even if it's at a subconscious level, right? So this is normal. Now, it doesn't mean that that man is conducting himself necessarily in a perverse way, right? But these are just what's happening with his body and what's happening with his mind, right? And it's very easy for a man to be aroused by their spouse, typically, if they have that normal libido, a normal level of testosterone and a normal libido. Normal. Now, a man who's addicted to porn will find themselves thinking about pornography throughout the day. They will feel themselves drawn to watch pornography. It'll pop in their head when they're doing something entirely different, and they'll think about watching pornography. I've talked to men. I have someone very close to me, a very close friend, who's addicted to pornography. And we've had long discussions about why you should not be watching pornography, right? So these men that are addicted to pornography, their mind is much more focused on sexual gratification to a dramatically higher degree than a man who is not a consumer of pornography, right? And on top of that, now this is the biological effect, but on top of that, and we kind of touched on this earlier, is that and even more so if they started as a teenager, that there is a behavioral effect that comes with this. They do not value women, right? They are more likely to be sexually violent with women. Now, here's an interesting fact, that every serial killer, the known serial killer, has been addicted to pornography. Now, not everyone addicted to pornography is a serial killer, but that is an interesting fact. The interesting thing to bring up, right? Every rapist, or at least nearly every rapist, has been addicted to pornography, right? Is addicted to pornography. Hypersexuality, right? So men have been hypersexualized, right? Their view of women has been destroyed, right? And their ability to form lasting relationships is gone. What happens? Well, they have a sexual desire that it has to be filled, and eventually even pornography and self-pleasure isn't enough. Enter the prostitute. So, again, this, let's talk about porn. Is it harmful, as society says? It is. It absolutely is. Porn can really alter consumers' sexual tastes. We talked about that. More aggressive. Men who are addicted to pornography are more likely to be aggressive sexually, which can lead to sexual assault. It can lead to a man not being able to take no, right? You know, being turned down at the last moment and then becoming violent, right?
It's just like you know, when I was raising my children out, you know, yeah, I raised my children to make sure that they save themselves for their, you know, spouses. But when you look at it, so many kids today and back then, as you look at them, they sat there, and I would say, you know, if you're gonna do it, and this might be something that people don't want to hear, I always say, shoot the stump before you hump. And one of the things is that they don't care about the woman.
Right. Hookup culture is also part of this problem. Yeah.
Yeah, they use them.
Yeah. So here's a point to bring up, and we already kind of touched on this, but porn can damage your sex life and sexual health. This point here mentions that it can lead to the porn habits, particularly among young men. It creates an epidemic of having issues with an erection. Can't get an erection with real live partners. So we're seeing here porn can harm love and drive a wedge in relationships, right? So this is a point that I mentioned before, kind of moving towards talking about the evils of pornography, but it's in relation to sex trafficking, because it's an underlying cause. It's what creates the demand. That's the point of this video, of this stream, is the demand for it, right? So we're seeing that when a husband watches pornography, right, even if that's not what he is intending to say to his wife through his actions, many women will see that as being, I'm not what he really wants. What he's watching is what he really wants. I'm not enough for him. And one thing that women really want in a relationship is to be desired. And if a woman doesn't feel desired and doesn't feel pretty and doesn't feel loved, she's not happy. And now you're on a course for your marriage to dissolve. That's what pornography can do to your marriage.
Okay, Chris, I have a young man here, which you've spoken to, and he's very adamant about, saving yourself for the
Abstinence.
woman that God has provided.
Yeah, abstinence.
And if you wouldn't mind, he'd like to say something if it's okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, bring him on.
Okay, so I'm gonna give my headsets to him.
Okay.
And I'm gonna let him speak. Okay,
all right.
If it's okay.
All right, we have another guest.
Okay, his name is Steven.
Okay.
Hello, Chris.
Hey, Steven.
Hey,
thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I just have to say something here, okay?
Uh-huh.
For one, you know how you said that social media has been, one thing about porn and all that stuff. That is entirely true because, for one, I've had young women, all right, throw me friend requests on Facebook.
Yeah.
Ones that I don't know. I have no clue who they are.
Yeah.
And I accepted their friend request just because I'm just, I'm a nice person.
Right. I do the same thing.
Yeah. And next thing later, I get probably 15, 20 minutes later, I'll get a message and, they'll start talking to me and, they ask me if I'm single or if I'm in a relationship, and I said to them, hey, I'm single, and I'm living with my my parents, helping out.
Yeah.
And next thing later, about you get into the conversation when they try to know you, they'll say, oh, I'm either naked in my room, and are you somewhere private and all that stuff. I have something to show you. And I'm like, I don't agree with that.
Right.
Okay. I'm 24 years old, and that's to me is not right.
It even gets more insidious than that too. So I've had similar experiences on social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's something that happened to me probably about 9 months ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 9 months ago? No, it wasn't that long ago, actually. I don't think it was that long ago. I think it was this year. Well, anyway, I was on Facebook and I got a friend request and from a woman. Now she's a woman closer to my age. And we started talking, and everything is all nice and innocent. And I'm single, but I'm a Christian. I'm looking for a wholesome Christian woman, and she starts portraying herself as that. But that's not really what she was. And next thing you know, she sends me a video of her that it was not something I wanted to see. Like, this was more than a text. Like, she sent me a picture or a video of her doing something, and it was like block, 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 block. I don't want that in my life. If you're willing to do that to somebody you haven't met in real life, I mean, it would be different if that's your husband and your husband's away from town. Like that might be okay. But to somebody you've never met, and you've only just recently met them on social media, no, that is not anyone I want to know.
Right. And that's the same with me. I don't agree upon that. With women who are doing that kind of stuff, it to me, it's not right. And I really feel bad to take and actually have to block them because of it.
Right.
But, to me, I feel like,
but it's,
at that point in time, I wish that, hey, I might have spoken the word, maybe a little bit more to her about it. But, they're so blind.
Well, if you tell them I'm a devout Christian, right? I have morals. I'm saving myself for marriage, and they still do that. They obviously don't respect you, right? And they know us men, we are easily aroused visually, right? And then when a man is aroused, it's very difficult for a man to think straight and do the right thing sometimes, right? Particularly if you don't have that strong moral center, that what I've called the etched in stone morality, right? If you don't have that, it's very easy to be manipulated in that way. So these women, but here's the thing, it's not just women that do this kind of stuff either. There's this whole thing all over Facebook. I've seen all kinds of women who were friends of mine on Facebook who talked about this, where they'll make friends with somebody on Facebook, right? A guy. They don't even really know this guy. And next thing you know, they're being contacted on Messenger. And before you know it, they're being sent a picture of the man's, erect genitals. It's and men that would do that obviously don't respect women. Right. So there is a way to conduct yourself as a man, right? That is both not lacking in assertiveness, that is confident but yet still respectful, right? So you can be a man and be the type of man that women are attracted to without being vulgar. Here's the thing. Women really don't like men that are vulgar, extremely vulgar. They really don't like it. Women are not aroused in the same way that men are, right? If that was the case, now you're not married. I was married once before, and I'm going to tell you, the wife walks out of the shower, the man's ready to go. The husband walks out of the shower, it's a yawn and back to her book. She doesn't care, right? It's an extremely different dynamic there. And so women don't want to see those things, right? They don't want men they don't know to send them pictures of, their junk. So, and the reason men do that is because, right, we're getting right back to these points. They conduct themselves this way because they don't know anything else. They're hypersexualized. They have no respect for women. They see women as a conquest, not as a potential partner or a mate or, someone to build a life with. It's their gratification. And it's really sad that society has gotten to that. And with that, I guess I will say that I will say this. I read a quote somewhere, and I'm going to add to this, that you can measure the health of society to the chastity of its women. Right?
You're absolutely right. Yep.
But I will add to that too, that as well as the faithfulness of its men. If you have men who are not faithful to their wives, if it's a culture where men are encouraged to be unfaithful, right? And that hasn't always been the case here in the West. Not that adultery hasn't always been a thing. I'm saying it hasn't been glorified as it is today, right? Then a lot of this demand is gone, right? Right?
You're absolutely right.
Men are not going to talk to and treat women disrespectfully like they do today. They're not going to send these pictures of their junk on Facebook to women they've never met. Like that's somehow going to impress them. It doesn't. Women don't like that kind of stuff. And if a woman does, that's a woman to run away from.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And you should always respect, your spouse, even, who you're married to. If they don't want to see you, like you said, after you hop out of the shower, and just walk into the bedroom.
Well, I mean, they may not care to see you, but my point was that they're not going to be aroused like if the shoe was on the other foot.
Right.
So, but it's even more important when you're married not to consume porn. Even more important then, because porn will destroy your marriage. It absolutely will. I mean, and this is without talking about the immoral aspect of it, right? I mean, the Bible tells us that if you lust after a woman, You have committed adultery in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
When you're married, you should only have eyes for your wife.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, men, even with a health, it's impossible to not think about that stuff. You're going to think about it. But you shouldn't be lusting after other women. You should be, in your life, you should only consume media and things that are uplifting and promising in your life, things that will teach you things. You know, instead of reading that dirty magazine, how about you read a self-help book, right? How about you read the Bible, right? How about you read the writings of the patrician fathers, right? How about you read a missal, a Catholic missal? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You know, something that is going to actually have a real benefit to you. But most importantly, what husbands need to do is spend time with their wives. Now, I'm not saying be clingy and follow them whenever they go to another room. I'm not saying that. Everybody needs their own space, of course. But you need to spend time with your wife every day. Because if you don't, your marriage is going to decline. A lot of this I'm saying is kind of advice for you here. Because you're a young man.
I appreciate it.
Because you're a young man and you're not yet married, and you can learn from some of my mistakes. Because some of these, the mistake of not spending time with my wife was the big mistake I made.
Right.
There was reasons why. I think I've discussed this before.
You have. It's perfectly fine for you to, you know.
Well, I mean, it wasn't fine. It was still wrong for me to do it.
Right. But
there was a reason.
It's fine that you can, you know, discuss it if you want again.
But yeah, it's very important, Stephen, whenever you do get married, that you keep your mind pure, keep your heart and your mind and your loins focused on your wife. Make sure that you're consuming the right types of media. Stay away from things that would stir within you lust for other women. You stay away from that. That might also include not going places where women are dressed and acting provocatively.
Right.
You probably shouldn't go to a strip club. No, you shouldn't go to a strip club. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it opens the door. The devil opens a door, and that leads into sexual immorality.
Right. Now, see, you know, when you mentioned, you know, going to a strip club, I dated a girl when I was, 16. She was 13, and it was just we were just friends. You know, at that time there was no intimate or anything. You know, because I was saving that.
Right.
And as she, as her and I were together, we separated because she was atheist, and I was heartbroken because I felt like I could change something of her, but she didn't want to listen. And now she has 2 kids, and she's actually working at a strip club.
That's sad.
It is. It's very sad.
Here's one word of advice for you when you said change her. Now, I know you were 16. I kind of thought that same way. Pretty much most people at 16 think that way. But I want you to etch this into the back of your brain. Write this down if you have to. Do not ever
take my hat off.
Do not ever enter into a relationship with somebody with the idea that you need to change them. Right? So now you could remain being friends with them, and if they change on their own, then that situation can change. But you should not ever enter into a relationship with somebody, particularly a marriage, if there's something about them that is unsatisfactory that you want changed. You should love them for everything that they are, good and bad, but it shouldn't be something that's so bad that it is unacceptable, right? So an example would be, and this is more coming from the female perspective, but as a woman, if you do not want to be married to an alcoholic, don't marry someone who drinks. Right?
Right.
It just makes sense. And then from our standpoint, a man's standpoint, right? If you don't want to marry a woman who is materialistic, don't marry a woman, don't start a relationship or marry a woman who wants material gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're just a commodity to them and they're never going to change. That's the key. People are never going to change. Now, a good woman can make a man want to be a better man and change. That can happen. It can. But someone is not going to change unless they want to.
It's got to be on their will.
They have to decide on their own. You cannot force someone else to change. So if their behavior is already unacceptable, it's not God's match for you.
Right.
They could be later down the road if they on their own change their own behavior. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And by being their friend and introducing them to Christ and hopefully inspiring them to have a closer walk with God, maybe then they will change their behavior and become that match that God intends for you. But you should, that happens before a relationship starts, not after, not during.
Right.
And you have no intention until that change, unless that changes, you have no intention of having a relationship, and you have to set boundaries with this person, right? We're not going to be alone with each other. We can go out and have fun and go to the movies, but there's going to be other people, right? We're friends, so we're going to hang out together with other people.
Right, right.
At most.
Right. Like the Ten Commandments says, you know, thou shalt not commit adultery or lust over a woman.
Right.
Covet.
Well, covet too.
Right. Wow.
I'm kind of snipped in there for just a second. She just let me know, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you've got a really good head on your shoulders. I like the way you think. You've got a good moral, virtuous mind about you. That's a very good sign for society. I'm really impressed. Your mama did good.
Well, if I didn't, you know, behave, you know, I'd have mother's wrath on me.
Them redheads. Yep, I know.
I can tell you what, I love God, and I love my country, and I do appreciate though what you have done for our country though too, and as you're doing now.
Thank you.
So I appreciate it.
I guess my last bit of advice too, and this is talking about if you're thinking about marrying a gal, you want to make sure you're marrying a woman where the one thing she loves more than you is Jesus.
Yes, and I agree.
That's if she loves Jesus more than you, she will honor you. She will be faithful to you. She will treat you right. She will respect you. She will be the kind of woman that you need. But you have to always remember to love her as Christ loved the church. And that means to sacrifice for her, to love her, to be patient and long suffering. And most importantly, be willing to sacrifice anything and everything for her.
Amen.
As a man, that's your job.
I would do the same.
Yeah.
I would.
So just what I told you here, just keep that to heart. I don't really consider myself a relationship guy. Everything the wisdom that I do have comes from trial and error and a lot of bruises and bumps on my head. I'm the type of guy I always have to learn something the hard way. I think I'm getting out of that as I'm getting older.
Yeah, I went through same things with other relationships, you know, trials and bumps and bruises, you know, with other, you know, young ladies. And I just said, you know what, it's all in God's will. There's a woman out there for me, and he's got one set, and you know, I'm just waiting, and you know, I'm young and I'm not in no big hurry. I've been single for it's been probably going on 5-6 years almost now. So, and I'm gonna keep it that way until God's.
Well, make sure you put yourself out there. I mean, as a man, it's your job to search her out, right? And it's her job to make sure she puts herself out there to be found, right?
Right.
You're not going to find a wife if you're not out there looking for her.
Right. Right. You're absolutely right. You know, trust me, I do plan on starting a family. But,
good.
You know, financial wise, that could be also a big problem on my behalf because.
Well, you're young. You're young. You're young. Don't wait until you've got the big house to have kids, or you may never have kids. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, put yourself out there, be faithful. Remember to always be respectful. Don't allow yourself to be a doormat.
Right.
You know, have your standards. This is what I want and what I won't put up with. And I think you'll do well. I think you'll do well.
Right. And hey, I appreciate it, you know, with all the advice that you've given me.
Yeah.
You know, and
thank you for coming on here and giving us your thoughts and opinions and experiences. I really appreciate it. I think our viewers will too.
Hey, I appreciate it. You know, I really do. So, you know, I'll hand you back over to my mom.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys keep on going. I'll be listening. So, God bless.
All right.
Take care.
All right. God bless. Take care.
Yep.
Hello, I'm back.
Well, welcome back, Kelly. That was a pleasure. Thank you so much for putting him on there.
Yeah, he came down and he was kind of like having his rant of, I want a holy woman. Women need to be pure.
Yeah.
So I was like, well.
Yeah.
And I said, that's the reason why I asked if you would speak to him, because that's the way I raised my boys and my daughter. And I thought, well,
you know, just as there's a dysfunction among men, there's a dysfunction among women, and it's becoming increasingly more difficult in society today to find a good, moral, virtuous woman. It is becoming more difficult. Young women today who are moral and virtuous, in my opinion, are the most valuable women in our society, because these are the women who will raise, one, they will have healthy marriages. If they marry the right man, they will have healthy marriages, and healthy marriages create healthy children who grow up to be healthy adults. And that ultimately is the foundation of a healthy society. And so women who are moral and virtuous, young women who are moral and virtuous should be praised, not ridiculed because they're not doing what everybody else is doing. And ultimately they will be valued, highly valued by the man that they do marry.
Right, and that's one of the things that Stephen really emphasized over and over, and especially in the last few years, that he said, you know, God's got a woman out there for me, as he told you.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, and he's going to church. He's seeking out a virtuous woman.
Right.
And that's the thing I told him he needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when we see these women, unfortunately, and young girls that have been molested, you know, we don't need to stand there and judge them for what happened to them at that moment in time. We just need to realize that God still loves them.
Right.
No matter what. And the thing is, they need to, you know, step forth and change their lives and, you know, seek the face of God. Because there is help out there.
So I'm looking at the chat. Our chat today hasn't really been really moving all that much, though I do appreciate everyone who has come and commented. Maya did say, good advice, Chris. More young men need to hear that. And then she, a few minutes later, really just 2 minutes ago, she said she had to go, dinner time. See y'all next time. Thanks for coming, Maya. Maya is one of my moderators and a friend. She's a great gal. An amazing gal. absolute sweetheart.
Yes, she is.
Her capacity for empathy and compassion for others is really astonishing. She is just really an amazing gal. Her parents did a really amazing job raising her. Of course, much credit goes to her, right? I mean, because she's made the decisions to live the life that she does. But she's just an amazing young woman, and any man who she falls in love with will be a very, very lucky man.
Yes.
And Maya and I are both part of Hobbit kind. We have this funny little joke thing because we both enjoy food and naps, and that's what makes you a Hobbit.
Me too. And you don't realize that I used to play the Hobbit game online, and I actually have Hobbit posters. And my husband knows how much I love, Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. I like to watch them. So it's kind of a funny thing when you mention the Hobbit.
So I do have a few friends that are women. They're just friends that I do talk to, some daily, some just periodically, a few. And we're just friends. There's nothing going on there. There's no intention there. And what's funny is, I love food, right? Like I love food. And there's some foods I love more than others. And we get to talking about food. And what's interesting is because I live alone now, and this wasn't true 3 years ago, as far as this aspect of what I'm getting ready to say is that I've learned how to cook, right? 3 years ago, I didn't know how to cook. And so we start talking about recipes and they start getting me hungry about stuff. And they'll mention, oh, well, I'm eating this. And I'm like, oh, you're evil. Now I have to go have it. I have to go make it. Why you do this to me?
That's so funny. That is so funny.
What's even funnier is if there's we have a shared favorite food, right? And then so that ends up being a common topic we discuss, and back and forth. Oh, me and food. I have a love affair with food. I do. You would think that I would be. It's really comes down to my metabolism, but you would think that I would be like extremely overweight. As much food as I eat and as much as I love food, you would think I am, but the opposite.
Well, I thank you very much, Chris, for letting my son Steven speak, because when, like I said, he came down here, he was like trying to tell me to tell you this, and I'm just like, and I just put him on hold, and to let him talk, because I thought that a young man needs to speak. Yeah. I mean, he's 24, he's going to be 25 years old on December 7th.
Yeah.
Pearl Harbor Day.
Yeah, sure is.
Pearl Harbor, baby. And I just wanted to make sure that you got his point across, because, he's young, and giving him guidance and letting somebody hear from a young man's perspective really needs to be heard, because there is everything from, like you said, back in the 60s or 40s, going back into that period of time where, clear back into the 1800s, where the catalogs had, corsets, and that was their pornography.
Right.
Like clear back into that period of time, they were looking at all that. And when you look at that and you go from that point in time to today, to where it's gone into pedophilia, trafficking, and selling of children, and where even parents have sold their children just so that they can have money.
Yeah.
It's something to sit there and have a young man come on and say, I want a virtuous woman.
Right. Now, I do want to say this, that sexual deviancy among men has existed since before pornography. But it was always a fringe element of society, but now it's become the norm, right? So when us Christians talk about how society has become perverse and immoral, that's what we're oftentimes talking about, is that what was once a fringe element of society that was frowned upon and ostracized has now become the norm. And I mean, this is it's not just what people normally would think of, let's say, whether it be homosexuality or things of that nature, but I'm talking about adultery and fornication and the hookup culture, and and now hookup culture is horrible, because what it does is you simultaneously have women saying, "Stop treating me as a sexual object," but we don't even know each other's names. Let's have sex. Well, to that man, that's all she is sex.
Right. And when they sit there and if they don't get what they want, then guess what happens? And it could be a man or a woman.
Right.
Unfortunately, because of the multiple lettering that's out there.
Right.
Because you can't keep up with what they name themselves anymore.
I mean, today they're
getting beat up.
They are.
They're getting abused in such ways,
right,
or even murdered.
Right. Today you've got men that won't even consider getting to know a woman unless he has sex with her and it's satisfactory. That's
exactly.
And then that gets into a performance element. And now no matter what's going on, one element of human sexuality that is a constant that will never change is that there's a power dynamic in every relationship, right? And that power dynamic, when it comes sexually, is always in favor of women, right? Women control the means of reproduction. They do. They just do. Sex happens when the woman agrees to it, right? That's where the whole aspect of consent comes from, right? And women who don't have, we're talking about like low self-esteem women who don't have, but they both don't have the self-esteem, and they don't have the moral, etched in stone morality to guide them, will give in and give these men what they want on demand. And it's really, really disturbing. This leads to a degradation of the family. What we're seeing today, there's a figure that was put out today among millennials. Now, mind you, millennials, I just watched I saw a report recently too, that the birth rate among millennials is the lowest of any other.
Dropped dramatically.
Yeah, of any other generation. They're just not even having sex. But here's the thing: is that 80% of millennial women are only breeding with 20% of millennial men. Now, that has all kinds of problems. Basically, among the millennial generation, I'm not saying there's not millennials that practice monogamy and get married. What I'm saying is that in general, that millennials are practicing monogamy much less than previous generations. It's actually really sad. It's actually really, really sad. And that has created this new thing called incels, right? Now, I don't really like how this is defined, because it includes, so many different categories, right? So somebody like, say, myself or your son, who is practicing abstinence until marriage, we're considered incels, right? That is involuntary celibate, right? You want to be in a relationship, but you currently are not, right? But incel also includes men who are socially awkward, who are incapable of attracting or keeping a woman, right? But also includes men. No, this is men and women too, though. Men or women could be incels, but also includes men and women who are physically disabled, A man who is severely physically disabled will find it practically impossible to find a wife, right? I'm talking about you're a paraplegic, right?
Right.
You're just not gonna. There's things that women need in life that women are gonna see that as you're incapable of offering that. So incels
and that even
include,
happens even say there's an accident, an auto accident.
Right.
That woman will leave that man.
Yeah, that happens too. Yeah. We'll leave him because he's now physically disabled and can't do what he did before. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Till death do us part, I guess, doesn't mean anything anymore. Says the man who was divorced. There was a my marriage. Here we go again. Oh my goodness. My failed marriage. Well, you know what? I've discussed this in past videos. Anybody who wants to know about it, you can go watch my other videos. I go into pretty good detail about the dissolution of that marriage. There was no saving it. It was a justified divorce. Absolutely justified, even biblically speaking. But anyway, you know what's really sad? We start talking about marriage. We're kind of getting off topic here, but I think this is a good topic to discuss. Is that divorce is really high in the United States, like really high, even
very high.
But it's even higher. The demographic with the highest divorce rate is combat veterans.
Yeah, I've seen those.
But an interesting statistic is that 70% of divorces are instigated, right? They're started, the divorce proceedings, by the wife, right? And what's interesting in this study that I've seen is that many of these women, I mean, a high percentage of them, they're filing for divorce because they're bored. They want to enjoy life. They're just not happy anymore.
Or they can't sit and wait and be alone.
Yeah. I mean, they'll push.
Their husbands are overseas.
Right. Or they've got a husband. They expect a certain lifestyle, and they demand that their husband work, and to provide that lifestyle, they're always at work, and then they leave their husband because they're not around. And that gets to one of the needs of that a woman needs. A woman needs a man to be present, needs her husband to spend time with her and fulfill those needs of feeling wanted and desired and needed and appreciated, right? But you can't do that if you're working 70, 80 hours a week. Like, it's really difficult.
That's right. I mean, but okay, giving a woman's perspective, I mean, I'm pushing 50, I'm hitting menopause. A lot of women, have that hormonal change.
Yeah.
Where it brings their hormonal change down, where men of the same age still have that testosterone hormonal upgrade, where they're still interested.
Yeah.
And it's hard at times, especially, if a woman's got physical issues like a thyroid issue that could cause problems.
Right.
So there are a lot of different things that could cause problems.
Well, a man.
But that's where communication needs to come into play.
Right. It does, but also a man who has a healthy male, right? We're talking a man who does not consume pornography, right? A healthy man. As he ages, it really begins like in earnest. This really begins noticeably in their 40s. But as a man ages, the testosterone level drops naturally, and that sex drive never goes away, of course, but it also decreases. And that happens. It happens to correlate.
Still up there.
It happens to correlate. It doesn't balance the situation, but it does lessen it a bit. But a man, that correlates to typically when their wife, who is of a relative same age, begins to go through menopause.
Right, and some women, unfortunately, are pushed into menopause because they've had to have a hysterectomy or something of that sort, and it can cause issues in that aspect.
That brings to mind,
because they may not take the medications that are needed, which are not good to always take.
Right. That leads to another topic, which we're not going to discuss here, but we can in a future video. We can discuss the effects of our environment and our diet.
Right. Yeah, that would be a really good topic.
On men and women, and how, particularly when it comes to cancers, how preventative measures are much preferred over medical treatment.
Right. But the biggest thing is our sex trafficking and what's going on in our world and how to sit there and bring it to the forefront.
Right.
That is a big thing.
That is.
Our cartels, what our government, our deep dark state's doing, and we need to really step it up with them.
Right.
In that regard, and covering even more of that, which is something that I'm going to step in and cover that, because I know that's something I don't really think you're really comfortable at the point between us talking. I might be wrong, but it is a very deep subject that I've gone very deep into, and it's very sketchy, and it's not something that a lot of people want to cover, but it's definitely some things that do need to be covered, because mainstream media doesn't want to cover it. They're trying to cover it up because they're part of it.
Yeah, they are. They are. Absolutely. There's usually when I use this term, I'm talking about conspiracy theories, but that's not what I'm using this term as. There's so much to cover when we go down the rabbit hole, right? Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that in this case is that there's so much that just is under the radar, that's not being reported, that so many aspects of this evil in our society that we need to expose.
And that's just it. That's what I've covered, I've documented, and there's a really, really good, my husband found a really awesome lady, and she outlined it. She did most of the work that I already looked up, but she put it into an outline.
Right.
So, I mean, she made it easy for me.
Right.
So, one of our series is going to be, a series that I'm going to do, and it is definitely going to be deep and dark.
Right.
Yeah. So, I will have to age restrict it and edit it in a cryptic way.
Right. Well, here's something we can do as a collaboration on your channel if you'd like, and we can discuss this in the future. But I've mentioned this before. Like I spent a large part of my childhood on a farm, and before that on a homestead, right? We raised horses and we had chickens and stuff, right? And so
we both did that.
So I think it would be interesting. Now could do this on your channel, or we could do a stream like what we're doing now, but on your channel, and discuss, you know, farming and homesteading, and just kind of go into that. We can discuss how we're going to do that and when we can do it in the future. That would be interesting.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. All right, folks. So we're going to go ahead and close it out tonight. It is after 11 p.m. It's almost quarter after 11 Eastern Standard Time. We've been live now for just over an hour, or over 2 hours, excuse me.
Yeah, I was going to say over 2 hours.
So in closing, and then I'll allow you to say something as well. Or give you the time. Excuse me. I don't mean to say that I'm allowing you to do anything, but I'll give you the time to also say something. But in closing, when it comes to human and child sex trafficking, right, we're seeing that the demand is ultimately has its root and foundation in pornography, the hypersexualization of men. We see it in a breakdown in society and relationships, and men who then have an exaggerated libido, having this now demand that they feel they have to fill, which creates a greater and greater and greater demand for prostitutes. And there's not many women who would willingly do this. So
I mean,
they have to fill that demand. And then when you talk about slavery as a whole worldwide, including sex trafficking, but this is now we're talking forced labor here, is that there is a high demand for products in the world, right? We live in a time where you can go, like I can walk down the store and buy anything my heart desires. I don't even have to drive. Like where I live, I can literally just walk to a Walmart, a Target, a Best Buy, Home Depot, Lowe's. I mean, you name it. Like, what do I want? I can walk and get it. You know what I mean? Well, there's that demand for it. And we've seen in previously tonight that many of the products we consume, even right here in the United States, at some point, some aspect of that product was handled by slave labor. Handled by slave labor. Maybe it's a component, or maybe it's in whole. Slavery is the great evil of the world. I mean, one would say slavery was the great evil of, United States history, and it was. But currently, slavery is not legal in the United States, though we do have sex slaves in the United States. It breaks my heart that this is the case. I believe a renewed effort to end slavery in this world must take place. The figure we discussed at the beginning of the stream was 45.8 million slaves worldwide. That is absolutely unacceptable. And if we don't do something about this, the fact that we know about it and do nothing, I believe we will be held accountable by God. There must be something that we do as not just as Christians, but as human beings, members of the human race, right? Children of God, we must do something to alleviate this great evil. There's solutions, and I don't know that all of those solutions are known. But we are going to do a stream in the future where we discuss this, and like we said, we'll try to set up like a call-in where people can call in, give their ideas and their thoughts, and we can try to come together and come up with what we believe is the solution. Like I always say, if you present a problem without a solution, you're whining. Interestingly enough, I didn't make up that. I thought I did. That's actually a quote from somebody historical. I can't remember who it was. So everybody, thanks for coming. Kellie, did you have something real quick you wanted to say?
Well, I wanted to thank everybody that came and listened, and we need to bring this to the forefront. So if you're not on social, of course you'd be on social media here, but if you're not on all social medias that are out there, at least speak to people about it.
Right.
Because it is something that needs to be brought to the forefront, because there's so many children that are being abused. They're being abused through foster care. They're being abused through coyotes, through the cartel, and through higher upper government, which is deep dark state. Right. And it's just, there's a lot of money that's being paid out there for these children. And they're not just being used for sex. They're also being used for other purposes, which we will get into later on in other discussions. Right. But I just ask that you please pray for each and every one of these children today, tonight, that are out there. Right. Because this is not the life that God wanted them to have.
So I see in the chat, we see Owen say, "Hi, Kellie," and "Hi, Chris Holman." And then you responded with "Hi" at Owen. And then Owen says, "It is Maya Atkins." So is Maya in the chat as Owen?
No. No, Maya actually, she left to get something to eat.
Oh. Okay. All right. I didn't know what was going on. I thought maybe Maya was in on somebody else's account. I didn't know. Okay. Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for coming, Owen. I really appreciate it, though we are kind of wrapping it up here. Anybody who's watching this topic, we have several other streams that we've done in the past. Go check those out. Like and subscribe for future content. Feel free to leave a comment below. Remember that God is love. I'm going to say a prayer real quick. I kind of feel led to say a prayer in closing.
Thank you. I was hoping you would.
Heavenly Father, we come before you today in praise and thanksgiving for all that you've done in our lives, all that you're doing today, and all that you will be doing in the future. Lord, we pray that you move in the hearts of men and women in our country and in the world today. Lord, we pray that you bring healing to these men, that you lay a conviction on the souls of men in this country to turn away from their sexual immorality and to turn to you, Lord. Let's dry up this demand, Lord, and bring healing to those that are entrapped, and give us the strength and the courage to fight this evil and bring an end to it. In your heavenly name, in the name of Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So thank you, everyone, for coming, for watching, for taking the time to spend your Saturday evening with us. God is love. God bless.
God bless.